welcome to Cos Talk. Today we are interviewing the lovely and talented AmberSkies.
Hi, hello, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. This is great. So, where do we start?
I don't know, the sky's the limit.
Tell us about speaking of starting, so how did you get started in cosplay? Like, how did you even hear about it?
Sure, how'd this crazy world come about? Well, it was kind of a very natural transition for me. When I was really little, I'd always done the dress up thing. I come from a long line of family members that have been artists, seamstresses, teachers, you name it. And in one way or another, all of that kind of all trickled down onto me. I grew up in an internet arcade / tabletop gaming store. So I was immersed in fantasy and this just crazy world of make-believe from the time that I was, born. My dad owned a game store here in town.
What game store?
It was called Leviathan Games.
Oh, okay, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and so, this is about 10, 15 years ago now, but so from the time I was way little, I grew up immersed in, Dungeons and Dragons. I was raiding on World of Warcraft by the time I was like 11, and so I just had that natural kind of exposure to this stuff growing up, and so starting to go to little cons like Phoenix Comic Con and being involved in all that stuff and just kind of participating and watching and all of this cool stuff going on around me, I started to become more and more involved in it.
Well, I know that you also do a lot of the makeup stuff.
I do.
And I'm completely envious of that because makeup is not my best skill. So,
and I'm the total opposite because I'm looking at your room and I'm looking at your house and thinking I cannot sew for the life of me compared to the things that you do. So I'll trade you lives a little bit there.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So, how did you learn about makeup? What are some tricks and tips that maybe you can help me out with?
Sure. Okay. Well, it started off with just your basic body painting, and it was always done until even very recently by hand. Because again, that painting background, I was like, well, if I can paint on a canvas, I can paint on my body. I choose to use water-based paints just because I find that's what's easiest to take on and then scrub off if you make a mistake. I use Mayron brand. It's a theatrical brand. You can get it at any store online. It's called Paradise Paint. And it's a nice Paradise Paint. Yeah, it does have a good name, and it smells really nice. It just is really, really smooth and opaque, and it just applies straight with a paintbrush. It's not an airbrush paint, so you don't have to worry about dabbling in a technology you're unfamiliar with. But I use Mayron Paradise Paint, they call it. And the character that I kind of began with all of that was Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy, and she's kind of like my main girl, where all of this costuming sort of moved from me in my house to a more professional level, and I started to get noticed for the things that I was creating in my kitchen, and it was just a whole crazy world of, wow, I'm being contacted by Marvel, I'm being contacted by cons that want to bring me out because I'm able to paint myself and to blend. Like, that's really cool. 90% of this world is pure luck too. I caught it right at the exact moment that it was starting to take off and get popular, because I wouldn't have guessed that this minor character that I saw in the movie was going to grow into this like amazing character that we see now. So I took a chance, and it worked out really well to plunge into that character. Being interested in body paint then transitioned into, okay, prosthetics. How do I hide things that I have? How do I add things that I don't? And it began with bald caps. So I taught myself from watching a ton of, YouTube tutorials, and my classes that I took in college really helped me with that as well. But so yeah, Nebula was my first all immersive, in all areas special effects creation, because I didn't know really what I was getting to when I first got going with all of it, but it taught me the painting, it taught me, the beginning of prosthetics, and I even started mold making and things like that of my own for her facial piece, and using Warblend thermoplastics and all sorts of cool materials for the first time. So that character taught me most everything that I know.
How long did it take you to make the outfit?
So I ended up making the first version of Nebula out of a pair of nurse scrubs that I found at Goodwill, like a nice purple color, some old boots that somebody had donated, and like a track suit, like a track exercise top. Wow. And some belts and a purple leather purse, and I literally just cut and stitched and folded and Frankensteined that outfit together.
Fantastic.
So it was fun. And then of course the second time around, after getting recognized for the first version of Nebula, Marvel was like, hey, you want to come and do the second one for us? And I was like, yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yes, please, boss, anything for you. So most exciting email ever. But
yeah.
Same kind of principle that I used for the first version Nebula, but I started expanding and going to upholstery stores, and finding pleathers and things that would work for more of a spacesuit, because the red outfit that she wears is a lot more intense than the first outfit. It's a lot of buckles and zips and ties and overcoats and undercoats, and it was a lot of fun, but I had to have the entire thing done in 3 weeks.
Right.
Because they contacted me, they said, hey, we need you out by, you know, mid-April, can you pull it off? And I went, okay, sure.
Sure, I don't need to sleep. Sleep is for sissies.
And I can assure you I didn't. There was a lot of tears. I actually had to get a substitute for my class for like 3 days because there was just no time left. And so by some act of whomever, I was able to pull it off. And I drove to LA on it was Easter Sunday, actually, now that I think about it. It was on Easter Sunday. Got there, filmed for 14 hours in a warehouse, and then got home at 3 in the morning to teach on that Monday.
So tell me about some of your other favorite costumes.
Yes, okay. I fell hopelessly in love with Wonder Woman, as most of us did.
Oh, yeah.
That movie was just dreamy, and it was like girl power, like the movie musical. It was amazing. So, but everybody in the world had already done the armor at that point, and I was like, okay, you know, I love Wonder Woman, but that one scene, it's literally just one scene with Wonder Woman, and she is incognito as Diana Prince, they called her. So I just decided to go crazy again, and I went to, again, a bunch of Goodwills, and I just started thrifting bits and pieces of the costume at a time. I found a nice felt hat that worked. It was like one of those blue little bowler hats type looking thing. I found a pair of glasses that worked, but mainly I found a men's, you know, nice gray blazer. And I found 2 long gray skirts. I kept the blazer intact, I just fitted it to myself, and then took the 2 different skirts, cut one apart and spliced it together to extend the length of the coat. I made pockets and essentially just tried to tie all 3 of the different pieces of gray fabric together to create the look. What really punched it up to the next level, and that I always like doing, is after all is said and done, you've built the costume, I like to genuinely go in with a brush, and I just do dry brushing in all of the crevices and all of the seams.
Makes it look real.
And it makes it look real. So Wonder Woman turned out awesome, and she's actually one of my more comfy favorite costumes to wear, just because she looks really good, but she's easy to wear out.
Right. Well, I find you super inspiring.
No,
I really do. Really do.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's
awesome.
You
inspire me. I'm like, look at your house. I'm like hoping I see myself here in the near future. I'm like, I need a crafting front room. This is amazing. You guys should see this house. It's seriously like a nerd heaven.
So tell us about the very first costume you ever made.
Okay, very first. Golly,
I remember mine. It was a curtain.
A curtain?
I made it from a curtain.
I was gonna say, I pictured you like as a curtain.
I made a skirt out of a curtain. Sorry. All right. But we're talking about you.
No, I love it. Okay, so let's see. Aside from elaborate Halloween costumes, which is what a lot of it was up until the
That's how we start.
Everyone starts on Halloween, then they go, I don't want Halloween to be once a year, I want it to be every day. And so we make it so. But the first costume that I ever truly made as if I would call myself a professional, was about 7 years ago now, when Disney first released the movie Wreck-It Ralph. And so the very first character that I ever fell in love with to the point of like, oh my gosh, I could make that, was a character from that movie called Sergeant Calhoun. And she's played by Jane Lynch, so she's a very sassy, like, in your face, I just hate you character. And I liked her attitude, it was just so funny. She was a very minor character in the movie, which is, again, that same twitch that I have of, hey, no one's gonna do that one, I like her. But, so what it was is a bunch of my friends had all gotten in a Halloween group, and they were like, hey, I'm gonna be Wreck-It Ralph, Penelope, and Fix-It Felix. And I thought to myself, can I be part of your Halloween group? And they're like, I mean, sure. I'm like, I'll be Calhoun. They're like, you realize that that's like space armor? Like, how are you gonna pull that off? They don't sell that at Spirit Halloween store. And I'm like, give me 2 months and I got this. And so I started Googling around and I was like, okay, costuming, cosplay, heard of that before. Like, how do I do this? And so I started looking up thermoplastics and like, how does one make armor? Like from scratch, how do you do that? And I started by going to my college theatrical costume shop and I was digging around and all this stuff. I asked my professor, I was like, hey, can I just go like dig through the plastic box and see what I find? And in there, I found a sheet of Wonderflex. And Wonderflex was just a material that's kind of like Warbler. It's a thermoplastic, but it's backed with like a mesh. So it behaves more like fabric than it does Warbler. And I was like, can I have this? I don't know what it is, but it's really cool. Sure, go for it. So
wow, that's expensive.
It is expensive. I found that out after the fact, and I was like, she must not know what this is, because it's like $40 a sheet. So I was like, thank you. And so along with the Wonderflex, I also found an old beat up from like an old Shakespeare play we had done at one point of Spartan armor. So it was just a junky Halloween like vacuum cast set of, bottom armor. I'm gonna mess up gauntlets and bracers and all that fun stuff. So it's just like a half set of used junky armor. And so collecting all of those in my little treasure arms, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go. And so going back to my dorm, I literally sat on the floor of my dorm with a hairdryer. Wow. And I was like, okay, I don't have a heat gun, so we'll just have to turn this on and hope for the best. Didn't work.
No.
But so it was my first taste of, wow, this is really fun. Like, I love the thought of taking this junky, chipped, gold, disgusting spray paint armor and making something out of it. And with a little bit of crying and driving down from Flagstaff to Phoenix so I could actually have a real workspace in my parents' house, and my dad, who's an artist too, was like, sounds cool, let's do it. We ended up using all the materials and buying a couple more pieces of stuff to full-blown create space armor as my very first cosplay. And so I'd always dreamed of going to San Diego Comic-Con. I managed to get tickets in the lottery, and I went. And I was like, oh, I'll wear my Halloween costume, sure. And the response was unreal. At San Diego Comic-Con, I got scouted off of the floor of the convention center.
Wow.
To say, hey, we're having this costume contest over at the Marriott. You want to come over? And I was like, okay. So they gave me this golden key of like admittance, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So I show up, being a noob, and it's a professional costume contest. And I'm like, huh? And so there's people dressed to the nines and like gorgeous creations and things like you made, and I'm just like, holy cow, I'm in garbage can armor right now, standing in front of these artists. And they also didn't tell me that the judges for that costume contest, as they throw me up on stage, were George R.R. Martin, and Norman Reedus and Greg Nicotero of The Walking Dead. Casual, right? And so I'm like, like this whole new world, and cameras are flashing, and I'm having a ball, and I'm like got photos of me like hugging George R.R. Martin and like hanging out with all these celebrities, and I'm like, I'm just a girl in my kitchen, like chopping up trash cans, and I go to school in this tiny little town in Flagstaff, and this is a crazy world, and I cannot wait to keep doing this. And that was 4 years ago now, and here we have it.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was really exciting to have you, and I hope that we have you back as like a special guest. We can do projects together. I think that would be amazing.
Yes!
And so if you liked this video, subscribe down below, hit the bell, hit like, all of that stuff, and keep watching for more great content. Have a great time. Bye.
Bye, thank you.